Personally, I want to get this recording session done. I've just closed my window and I regret it already. Hello, my name is Alex Does F1 Stuff and welcome to a very, very hot day in England. It's like this 30 degrees, it shouldn't be 30 degrees, I'm sweating inside, it's yucky, but it's been 2 weeks and we've finally got some racing. It is round number 4 in Great Britain around Silverstone, and this is my weekend review. And without further ado, we will jump straight on into practice. I really want to open my window again, but I can't whilst I'm recording because it's very, very windy outside. We've just finished practice. It is currently 16:52 on Friday, and it was actually surprising. You know, there were a few surprises. But the first big thing, big thing before I actually get into this, Sergio Perez was out. He was tested positive for coronavirus. A test on Thursday or Wednesday or something like that proved inconclusive. So per the COVID-19 regulations, he was self-isolating and awaiting a second test. During this time, Force India Racing Point were deciding on a backup driver, on a new driver, and actually chose Nico Hülkenberg. So Hülkenberg is actually coming back, but it is looking likely that Sergio Perez will be out of action for the British Grand Prix this weekend and also the 70th anniversary Grand Prix next weekend. But with that news out of the way, we will jump straight on into practice 1, which is actually topped by Max Verstappen, with Hamilton P2 and Stroll P3. But we will start with the Alfa Romeos, actually. Giovinazzi had a wee bit of a spin. Also, Raikkonen had a wee bit of a spin. However, Raikkonen's spin was just a sort of gentle spin. Giovinazzi's was a little bit more hectic, and his car sort of, it's just sort of exploded when he was rejoining on the track, drove a wee bit too quickly, and he was summoned to the stewards and given a warning, I think, after that, but the session was red flagged briefly so they could clear the debris. But other than that, it was quite a poor performance from the Alfa Romeo squads down in P16 and P18. Anyway, so on with the review. My tyre column. I spoke last time 2 weeks ago over Hungary that they need to put out a decent tyre graphic. So far all they've got is this table here. I've pinched this from the F1 Twitter, and it shows their stints quite nicely. I like that. It shows what tyres they used when they came into the pits, how many tyres they used, etc, etc. But it doesn't tell you what tyre they set their fastest lap on. So when you're trying to compare times, if I send the table away, it's difficult. They attach an article along with that table and such, and it does sort of say Verstappen was on the softs, Hamilton was on the mediums, but it doesn't break down everybody. So I have to use that table and say, I guess he set the fastest lap on the fastest tyre that he was on, but in Bottas's case, he was on the hard tyre. That was confirmed in the article, but he did use the soft tyres. So it's really difficult for me to actually find out the tyres that they used, and I feel that's kind of an important piece of information. I know practice is all slightly secret, you know, that you don't really know what engine modes and what fuel loads you're running, so it's a bit uppy-downy, but I feel tyres is such an easy way to just... It's such an easy, addition to make, I suppose. It's just an easy thing to pop in. Just a little tyre graphic which says, these were the ones that they set their fastest lap on. Anyway, aside from that, we'll talk about Renault. Renault now, where is my picture? There we go, it's popped up. 7th and 8th. Honestly, a strong performance on the medium tyre. Decent medium running for the pair. Behind Bottas, also on the hard tyre. But yeah, very strong. Behind Leclerc though. Leclerc and Ferrari actually had a decent day. 5th place, I was expecting them to struggle a lot. Personally, to be outside of the top 10. Vettel though, down in P20, had some issues with, I've written this down, a intercooler issue within the engine. Quite what that means, I'm not 100% sure, I'm not a Formula 1 mechanic, but it put him out for the whole session. And the last team we will talk about in practice 1 is Racing Point and the return of Nico Hülkenberg. Imagine the fairy tale ending to his career. Turns up replacing Sergio Perez for being ill. races for Racing Point, the Tracing Point, the pink Mercedes, whatever you want to call it, grabs a podium. It's been like 177 starts or 176 starts or something like that. No podiums. Imagine. He's dumped by Renault, gets called back due to illness into Racing Point, and he grabs a podium. That would be incredible. But anyway, we move from practice 1 into practice 2. It was an extremely swelteringly hot day, 49 degrees on the track and about 30 degrees air temperature, which I am feeling right now. It sucks. But it is led by Lance Stroll, with Albon in second and Bottas in third place. But we will start with Alex Albon. He had a crash. A fairly big one, not gonna lie. Just coming on, I think it was out of Stowe, in the village section, as you can see the pit complex. Just lost the rear. No real issues at all. Tried to catch it, then lost it again and hit the barriers. Quite heavy damage on the left-hand side of the car. Christian Horner came on. I was watching the Channel 4 live coverage, and they're possibly thinking about changing the gearbox. However, it's not his race gearbox, so he shouldn't incur a penalty. But both drivers, as you can see, Verstappen down in P14, both drivers are still complaining at the unpredictability, the understeer, the oversteer of their RB16. And next up again is Ferrari. Leclerc, strong. Leclerc is actually looking good. Ferrari, well, one half of the garage is actually looking good. I was so surprised at this in front of Lewis Hamilton on the soft tyres. They were doing soft tyre runnings. We will talk about Mercedes later. But yeah, that's pace. That's on pace. Same tyre. And they're splitting the Mercedes pair. That's quick. But you will notice Vettel down in P18. Not a happy bunny in his Ferrari. Just a weird session for Vettel. He got out of his car. He was fiddling with his pedals or his brakes or something like that. You never see a driver do this in Formula 1 anymore. It's always the mechanics. The drivers just tell the mechanics there's something wrong down here. Can you fiddle with it? But Vettel said, no, I'm going to fiddle with it. What is going on that side of the garage? The car clearly has pace, but Vettel isn't showing it. Whether his car still has the issues from practice 1, we're not 100% sure just yet. But moving from Ferrari to Mercedes, they had an off day today. Honestly, I was expecting them, maybe not in practice 1, because they don't often go hell for leather in practice 1, but practice 2, where they do their qualifying simulations, then they're third and fourth, fifth even, third and fifth. What's that? What's up with that? Why aren't they 6 million seconds in front of everybody like they've been in the past 3 Grand Prix? I'm not sure. They never really managed to get a nice clean lap in on the soft tyres. Something always happened. Hamilton was uncharacteristically making errors, just small little errors, but errors nonetheless. Also complaining that it was extremely hot, probably not helped by the fact his car is black. But on the medium tyre, high fuel runs that they did in practice 2, Bottas's engineer said that they are on pace with Verstappen in the Red Bulls. So it could genuinely be a very close battle this race, and I am very looking forward to it. But we move to McLaren now. A much better session. They were outside of the top 10, something like P14 and P13 in practice 1, P6 and P11. Again, some soft tyre running. I've said that everyone's run the soft tyres. Some of them may have run the mediums. I'm not 100% sure on that, as there's no tyre graphic for it. But yes, P6, not bad at all. To be in front of Hülkenberg in the Racing Point, and also Gasly in the AlphaTauri, the Renaults, really strong running there. Also notable point, I don't actually have a picture, but Alfa Romeo, massive step forward, huge improvement, 10th and 13th. Not bad in the slightest, but you'd have to say that if Verstappen and Vettel improve, they'd definitely be outside of the top 10, which could just happen. And finally, for practice, we've got Williams to talk about. A little bit disappointing, I'm not going to lie. Judging by their pace, their genuine pace in Hungary in the dry, that was able to get into Q2, they've really struggled today. Really struggled. 17th and 20th. And Latifi is particularly slow. He's a full second off of Magnussen in P19, and he's 1.2 seconds down on Russell. That's just, that's too big. That gap is bad. That gap is very, very bad. Just looking up and down that list, any other things to note? AlphaTauri didn't have that bad of a session, sort of just doing their own thing. Again, it's so hard for me to pinpoint AlphaTauri as they're just 8th and 15th or 10th and 11th. They're just sort of there. They're in the top 10, but in the lower reaches of it. Again, strong running there. One note about Nico Hülkenberg though, he was resting his head a lot. You could clearly see it whenever you went on the onboards. He'd kind of try and hold it, and then it just went whoop to one side. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Didn't know that he was going to be coming back to Formula 1, so he wouldn't be doing all of the Formula 1 driver training. So that really doesn't surprise me at all. Definitely going to get a good night's sleep tonight. But before I end today's recording session, I just want to say that it's actually a tad bit of a shambles. This whole illness and driver changes sort of thing. And what I mean by that is, this pandemic is going through, there is an extremely high chance that your driver can catch it, even regarding the fact that they've got all these protocols, all these new COVID regulations and such. A driver has still caught it. Drivers are susceptible, they're normal people. So why there should really be a proper reserve driver, something else kind of driver thing, if that makes sense. There should be a better system, because Racing Point don't really have reserve drivers. They were looking at using one of Mercedes' reserve drivers, Van Dorn, who's currently occupied in Berlin with Formula E, or Gutierrez, but Gutierrez didn't actually have a super license. He needed to do 300 kilometers of running. And for me, that's a wee bit of a shambles when this situation is going on. But we've got Hülkenberg in the car. Hopefully he can get a good result in that pink car. But that is it for practice 1 and practice 2. Join me tomorrow for practice 3 and qualifying. So here are the practice 3 results, dominated by Mercedes as they finally actually show a small bit of pace. Conditions were a lot cooler and very much suited their car other than yesterday. So first is Bottas, then Hamilton and Verstappen. But we begin with Red Bull, and particularly Albon. It's not a picture of Albon. I couldn't find a decent picture of Albon. Down in P12, only 9 laps. A lot of issues. I think he had some electrical problem, so they rebuilt the car after his little shunt in practice 2, and they bought some new parts in for this morning, rebuilt the car, started it up, and it just didn't work. Didn't like any starting up at all, so they spent about 45 minutes-ish of the session trying to fix it. They did. He managed to get 9 laps in and only finished P12. So for a weekend where Albon really needs to perform, he's not performing. But equally, that's not 100... Well, yes, it is his fault because he crashed the car. But the McLarens actually had a good turn of pace today. 5th and 7th for Sainz is P5 behind Leclerc. Leclerc had a stellar practice 3, but also Norris doing some decent soft tyre running. They are unfortunately a second off of the Mercedes, but you can see it's a nice close battle between Stroll and the Racing Point, the McLarens and also the Ferraris, with the Renaults also getting in the mix there as well. But speaking of Leclerc, what a performance. Where has this pace from Ferrari come? He's 6th, in between the 2 McLarens. However, like Red Bull, it's again a tale of 2 halves for one team. We've got one driver performing exceptionally well and another who isn't. Vettel down in P14, constant issues, always complaining that there's something moving in the bottom of his car. He's just not a happy bunny at Silverstone at all. However, Leclerc has come out of this saying that their single lap pace is good. Their race pace is not good, which is not what you want to hear going into Silverstone tomorrow, so they may end up slipping slightly further down the order. As we move on to Haas. Haas actually had, I suppose, an okay running, again, some soft tyre, running in practice 3 just to get some qualifying simulations, and they seem to be a bit quicker than the Alfa Romeos, possibly even the Williams, but we know that the Williams just go well in qualifying. Just look at the last 2 races. So maybe a Haas can actually get into Q2, possibly, but they're gonna have to get it right. They're gonna have to hook it up and hope that the Williams make a mistake. Otherwise, unfortunately, like Alfa Romeo, they're going to be out. And speaking of qualifying, we will now move into that right now. It's currently 19:24. I got back from work at about, just before 6 o'clock. Missed qualifying, and it was just annoying just reading the headlines, and I wanted to watch it. It's live this weekend, but stupid work. Anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is. We will jump straight on into Q1, and we start with Alfa Romeo. Out again, both cars in Q1. It's just really, really disappointing. It sucks seeing a team like this struggle. We went through it last year with Williams, that they were just almost depressingly, embarrassingly slow. It's just not enjoyable to watch a team with the prestige. I know Alfa Romeo have had their history in Formula 1 of winning drivers' championships, and it is a completely different team now, but still to bear that name and to be at the back is a bit disheartening. And again, also looking at the drivers out, it is Haas, unfortunately, both cars once more. Magnussen in P16 and Grosjean in P19. Again, I think they're going to be disappointed with that. They would have liked to have got just one car, at least just one car in to Q2. But yeah, that's the way of the sport. That is the way of the sport. And the final driver we will talk about today is Nicholas Latifi. Looking at Russell through to Q2 once again. Russell is incredible. He is outperforming that machinery immensely. If we look at Latifi, they were decent in F2, like the junior formulas, going up against each other. But now they're in F1 in the same machinery. It is clear that Russell is just incredible. He's 7/10 quicker than Latifi, and Latifi is down in last. Yes, he did have a little spin, a little incident in Q1, but nothing too major. But still to be last again and behind the Haas's, behind the Alfa Romeos, when that car has Q2 potential, it's again a bit disappointing. But another notable point is how badly the McLarens actually struggled, 12th and 15th in Q1. But we move from Q1 into Q2, and Renault has popped up. I forgot to animate that picture. So I guess we'll talk about Renault and just hope for the best. So Renault, a very strong day, a incredibly strong day. Both cars into Q3, 6th and 7th. In front of a McLaren, in front of a Racing Point, and even a Ferrari. That is exactly where they want to be for this weekend. And just removing that Renault picture, we will talk about Lewis Hamilton. He spun. He had an uncharacteristic, rare mistake, especially in qualifying. We don't really see qualifying mistakes from Hamilton. He's usually just nailing it. He's been behind Bottas this whole weekend. He's currently 3/10 down in Q2, but it's Mercedes. They are over a second clear of Verstappen in Q2. But yeah, to see this mistake from Hamilton, he's not been happy really all weekend, which is such a shame at his home Grand Prix. I mean, I say it's such a shame. He's had the dominant car for the past 6 years. But to have this sort of errors on your home Grand Prix, it definitely is going to start compounding in your head, and he may just make some more. But it is both Mercedes through into Q3 as always on the medium tyre, as is Lance Stroll making it through on the medium tyre, just setting the exact same time as Gasly. A 1 minute 26.501, but his time was set first, so he goes through into Q3. Vettel also gets through on the medium tyre as well, whereas everybody else into Q3 is on the softs. So even if the Ferrari has some bad race pace, it looks like they're on the better strategy. Unfortunately though, Nico Hülkenberg is out on his return to Formula 1. I'm impressed. I am impressed. I really, really am. And Albon though, P12, that is disappointing. Albon is slow. I know I made a video a couple days ago, maybe weeks ago. I made 2 actually, comparing Albon and Gasly, and then one about is Albon genuinely slow. Yes. This was his weekend to prove his worth, and he binned it. Got limited running in FP3, and now he's out in Q2. He's slow. Yeah, you gotta say it, he's slow, unfortunately. But definitely for me, the surprise is Ferrari. And just where has this pace come from? Their fastest, or their single lap pace, is actually decent. They were quick in the speed traps at the apex speed. What? I don't know where this has come from. They must have just stripped the downforce off of their car, and they've now actually got some decent single lap pace. Whether that's going to translate into race pace, who knows? But as of recording this, there is a incident. George Russell is hit with a 5-place grid drop for failing to respect yellow flags in qualifying. I believe this was for Latifi's spin in Q1, possibly to do with Hamilton's, but I know that went straight to a red flag, so it could have been Latifi spinning Q1. But unfortunately, after managing to get through into Q2 for the 3rd time in a row, he is going to be starting last, which is a huge disappointment at your home Grand Prix. And with that, we head to Q3. Hamilton on pole position by 3/10 from Valtteri Bottas. Bottas having led pretty much the whole weekend, apart from Friday. On Saturday, he's led every session. FP3, Q1, Q2, and then when it mattered, he wasn't there. 3/10 the gap, and then a staggering 2nd back to Verstappen. That is a dominant display from Mercedes. I don't know how to say it. It's impressive that they are still this quick, but it sucks that they are still this quick, and how no one has been able to catch them. It's annoying because you want to see a challenge for the lead. You don't want to see just one team all the way at the top every single weekend. But a 2nd is a staggeringly big gap. And again, back to Ferrari, it is of course the same picture of Leclerc. They don't upload many pictures Ferrari on their Twitter. But P4, that's how good, that is how quick their car is. I predicted in my pre-race review for Britain, they weren't even going to get into Q3. And both cars are in. Vettel is even in on the medium tyre, and he is on a good race strategy. And Leclerc is P4. That is incredible. And also the McLarens. The McLarens will be exceptionally happy with 5th and 7th, in between a racing point, but they are on a different strategy to Stroll. So I feel they may just be outraced by the racing point. It depends on the start, I suppose, and I do feel that Leclerc is definitely going to go backwards. The top 3 are going to disappear off. I don't think much is going to change there, but Leclerc is going to drop back. Norris and Sainz will make their way through, and Stroll his strategy will help him get in front rather than on-track overtaking ability. And finally, Renault, again, once more. A incredible performance, the performance they've needed this whole year. They've finally got a quick car, a solid chance to get both cars in the points, and some solid points gained for the team. They really need it. They really need it. But that is it for Saturday. Join me tomorrow for the race. Well, that was a somewhat interesting race, to say the least. It's just happened. Currently 18:57 on Sunday, and I mean, I'm a little bit bewildered, I'm not gonna lie. So let's just hop straight on into the race results, I suppose. It was a victory for Lewis Hamilton, with Verstappen in 2nd, just 5.8 seconds back, and Leclerc makes it onto the podium in P3. Then come the Renault of Daniel Ricciardo, with Norris in between Ocon, then Gasly, Albon, Stroll and Vettel are your points finishers, with Valtteri Bottas down in 11th. But what makes Hamilton's victory today so impressive is he did it on 3 wheels. A puncture on the last lap. His front left, just look at it, it's flat, it's ruined. It wasn't like a delamination puncture, it was just he just ran out of tread, basically. He pitted early, due to a safety car, which we'll get onto a little bit later, put on the hard tyres around lap maybe single digits, maybe early teens, and went to the end and it went kaput. And exactly the same happened to Bottas, but on lap 50, which is why he lost so many places. However, up until lap 50, when Bottas's tyre went poof, it was I don't know, a 4 out of 10. Wasn't the most entertaining racing up until lap 50. But yes, Max Verstappen, P2, scoring the fastest lap as well, hunting down the injured, wounded Lewis Hamilton. So it wasn't until Bottas's puncture came around that then Verstappen had a nice safety buffer to pit and come in for the fastest lap. However, in doing so, it just ruined any chance that he had of catching up to Lewis, and they basically conceded at that point that they weren't going to win the Grand Prix. Whereas if they'd have stayed out and not pitted and gone for the fastest lap point, they wouldn't have just gained 1 point, they would have gained 7 points. So I suppose Red Bull will be a little bit annoyed at that they could have won. They genuinely could have won, but they pitted Verstappen and went for the safe single point when, knowing that Bottas's tyres had just buggered themselves and Hamilton is in a very similar position, it could have gone that way. So I suppose Red Bull could be kicking themselves a little bit. But again, Albon, P8. Oh, it's Albon, no. Like I said before in this video, I think I've made 2 videos on Albon. He really needed this race to prove that he is there, to prove that, and he's not. Is he? He's not. He had an incident with Magnussen on the opening lap. I don't have a picture of it, but basically just tried to overtake him up the inside of the final corner, I think, and then punted him off, clipped his rear tyre, very similar to what Hamilton did to him in both Brazil and Austria, and then Magnussen went off and hit the wall. That's not what you need. And then he just finished 8th, behind the AlphaTauri, couldn't get past it, behind the 2 Renaults and a McLaren, when Verstappen's up on the podium. It's not what Albon needs at all. He needed a strong performance today. But talking about the Renaults, what a performance. 4th and 6th, a solid race. My team of the race, they needed that result. Honestly, a smashing weekend. If they can repeat another double points finish well within the top 10 next week, honestly, it's now game on in the midfield. That is going to be one hell of an exciting battle. They picked their right moments. They were fortunate with Sainz, who also got a puncture as well on the front left, down in P13. It was just a very good result for Renault. But Leclerc. Fairly sure I've used this picture somewhere else before, I can't remember. But P3, another podium. In actuality though, his only 2 point scores that he's had in 4 races have been podiums. So he's had a 100% podium record this year for every time that he's been in the points. So you'd have to say, looking at the trend, the next time he finishes in the points, he'll be on the podium again. Just a thought, just a little thought there. And he's also got a 2nd and he's got a 3rd. He's just missing a 1st. So again, looking at the trends, it's a 1st the next time he's in the points. Obviously that's not going to happen in any stretch of the imagination. It's cool to think about. It is cool to think about. But tale of 2 halves. Vettel, down in P10, little bit shit, not going to lie. It just, again, like Albon, just not there, not comfortable with the car and not on the same performance as his teammate. And I think Pierre Gasly is up next. That was a strong performance. That was an incredible performance from Pierre Gasly. P7, in front of the Red Bull, in front of the Racing Point, the pink Mercedes, the looky-likey car, and they're in front of it. Honestly, that was incredible. That was a good performance from Pierre Gasly. However, on the other half of the field, Kvyat had a bit of a Kvyat crash. Fairly big actually. It looked like a rear left or a rear right puncture caused him to spin going into Maggots and Beckett's in the chapel section and just smashed into the barriers quite heavily. Really unfortunate for Kvyat, otherwise I feel he could have been up there as well with Gasly in the top 10. But we move to Racing Point, and Hülkenberg failed to even start the race. Not 100% sure at this moment in time why. That was possibly an electrical issue, possibly an engine issue, not 100% sure. And then Stroll, P9. What was that? He was, I can't remember what he was in qualifying, in the top 10, maybe P6 or something like that. And he's P9. I don't know where the pace went in the Racing Point. It just seemed that in the closing laps, he was sort of with the Renaults and the McLaren's group. And then he just dropped and slipped and fell downwards and downwards and downwards. A very disappointing day for Racing Point. But Williams is a team that have actually done well today. Williams can be happy, P12 and P15. Latifi though, Latifi, you need to be a little bit quicker. Just a little bit quicker as I belch into my microphone again. I mean, yes, he was only, 2.5 seconds off of Russell, but that's because there were late safety cars, etc., which is why the field is so bunched up. But he just needs to be a bit quicker, a bit closer to Russell, and then he can actually start to build some momentum up and build that team up with Russell. They almost got some points, almost opportunistic, and took advantage of all the incidents that were going on. A solid race, unlike Alfa Romeo. Oh, it's a bit of a tricky one. Raikkonen had an incident. I think his front wing broke, and then that sort of punctured his tyre, and that was again halfway around the lap, and he had half the lap to go before he came back into the pits. Giovinazzi P14, again, not too bad, keeping out of all of the trouble, but P14 isn't where you want to be. You don't want to be with Latifi at that end of the field. And finally, Haas. Yeah, a bit of an odd afternoon I've written here. A little bit slow with Grosjean, down in P16, slower than the Alfa Romeo, slower than the Williams, and then colliding heavily with Albon was Magnussen. It's kind of Albon's fault in my opinion, but as it was on the opening lap, it was seen as a racing incident. Unfortunate for Haas, but I don't think they would have been on for points anyway as it is. But that's the race. That is motorsport. That happens. So, rating out of 10. Lap 1 to 50, 3 or 4, maybe 3.5, 3.6 or something like that. Lap 50 to 52, you'd have to say 8 or 9. So based on that, I suppose, rate the race 5. Wasn't particularly interesting until the last couple of laps. But we will have a look at what's happened in the way of the championships. With Bottas failing to score any points and Hamilton grabbing the victory, he's extended his lead to 30 points. A victory, a comfortable victory in front. Yes, Hamilton, I suppose, is due some bad luck, but I mean, he had bad luck. But then also good luck because he had the puncture. Bottas P2, Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc doing well. Albon, the 2 racing points. Ricciardo, Sainz, Gasly, Ocon, Vettel, Magnussen, Kvyat, and then Latifi, Raikkonen, Russell, Grosjean still yet to score. As for the constructors, Mercedes extend their lead by just 1 point to 68. Then McLaren is still holding on to 3rd, with Ferrari now 4th ahead of Racing Point by just 1 point. Renault are now 6th, with the 2 Alfas next to each other, and Haas on 1 point still, with Williams yet to score. And looking at some graphs, just nice little visualizations of all of this data, you can see Hamilton is now leaps and bounds in front, and you'd have to say he's going to hold on to that, isn't he? But I suppose if in 1 week's time at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, if Hamilton has a no point score or a slightly lower score and Bottas ends up winning, then it would actually bring the graph slightly closer together. But if Hamilton stays within the top 5 for the next few rounds, it's looking unlikely for Bottas now. Which is a shame, which is a giant shame. And finally the constructors, Mercedes again holding on to their large point lead. And as McLaren, just in that little midfield, poking away from the Racing Point and Ferrari group, as Renault are just leaping up now, a little bit quicker than the AlphaTauri car there, and then you've just got that jumbled mess of Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams at the bottom. And that is it for my British Grand Prix weekend race weekend review, whatever I want to call it. I have just made a speed review in 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the whole British Grand Prix weekend. If you can't be bothered to sit through and watch a 30-ish minute video, it's probably going to be about 35 minutes long, this one. But I will catch you in the next video with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.